Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Northwest Naturalist Notebook. I'm your host, Kirsten, the Northwest Naturalist. Let's jump in. We've made it pretty far together on our Nature Journaling is Learning journey. In fact, I think I see the final stop in sight, but how did we get here and where are we going to next? Let's talk about N is for navigate. For a really long time, I didn't really use maps often in my nature journal. In fact, I was inspired to start trying to use them by seeing the work of other nature journalers like Roseanne Hansen and Avea Moore. And I found that they were an interesting way for me to use my nature journal in a new way and to kind of break out of feeling a little stuck. So let's talk about a couple ways we can use maps and navigation in our nature journal practice. The first way is to use maps to record the path that we've taken. Now, I've mentioned before that I really enjoy participating in community science projects. And I've had the opportunity to partner with local organizations to do things like beaver evidence or amphibian egg mass surveys, as well as surveying birds in local parks. And I found that when I paired a map with other information I was recording as I reflected on those experiences, that it really added a lot more, not only to my nature journal page, but to helping me remember and connect with the experience. For activities where I was going back to the same location over and over again, like the bird survey, I especially found the use of maps in my nature journal helpful so I could remember the exact path I was supposed to take. I've also started using digital tools like eBird to help me track my path as I go through an area, and then I can use that information to more clearly record it in my journal. The second way I use maps in my nature journal is to record where I found something. I have used maps in the past to track different trips I've taken. For example, a family trip to John Day fossil beds, where I was recording where the different units were located and notes about the different things I saw in each area. I've also started using it in a much more local way by tracking where I was finding interesting plants or animals, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't. And I was able to use that information to not only record where I had found that, and then to be able to record that later in iNaturalist, but also, I found that the process of trying to map out where I was finding things really allowed me to slow down a lot more and to notice a lot more detail and to look much more closely. I ended up finding, for example, the trilliums that were growing in a local park that I thought there were a few here, a few there, but it turned out that when I went and recorded them in my journal, there were a lot more growing in different size patches throughout the woodland. I also find it helpful to include a key with landmarks or using different color to represent where you've seen different things, whether that's a particular plant, a particular color, a landmark like a snag or downed tree, to help you be able to go back to those spaces and revisit them later on and maybe see how it's changed over time. So that brings us to this episode's challenge, map it out. Take some time to head outside and take a walk. Long, short, you decide the distance. And record the path that you take as you go. Take the time to notice what kind of jumps out at you around you, particular animal or plant, and maybe jot some notes about where you found them. Are there any key landmarks that might help you return to that specific spot later on? And you can create the map live in the field as you travel, or feel free to use a tech tool to record the path you take and the distance traveled, and then add those details to your journal once you're home. You never know what fun and interesting things you might encounter out there. And until next time, I'm Kirsten, the Northwest Naturalist, wishing you happy exploring.